Greetings, this is Professor Lazarus again, and today we will be talking about fixed costs, variable costs, and mixed costs, as well as its effect on the total costs on each unit. Before I start the discussion, I'm going to step aside and let you review some of the information I have on the whiteboard behind me, and then I'll join you in just about a minute after we had a chance to look at the information. Okay, let's start the discussion with variable costs. Assume that we're going to be manufacturing tables. Let's assume that we're going to use wood to manufacture our tables. So wood would be a raw material that's used in the manufacture of our tables. Let's assume that each table requires $5 of wood. So based on this information, let's go through the table that I have prepared for you here. If we manufacture one table, the unit variable cost, that is the amount of wood per unit, per table, would be $5. And the total wood cost for one table would also be $5. But look what happens when we go and manufacture two tables. When we manufacture two tables, the amount of wood used per table is still 5. So our unit variable cost stays constant, does not change at $5 a table. But look at what happens to the total wood cost, the total variable cost when we manufacture two tables. The total wood cost now has changed to $10 from the earlier 5. Let's go down to 3 tables. When we manufacture 3 tables, again, the amount of wood per table does not change. That stays the same at $5 per table. So your unit variable cost stays constant at $5. But look at the total wood cost. The total wood cost now has gone up to $15. So what conclusions can we draw from this table? The conclusions are that your unit variable cost stays constant with changes in volume, but your total variable cost changes with changes in volume. If your volume goes up, your total variable cost goes up. If your volume drops, then your total variable cost comes down. So wood is an example of a variable cost, and I have just illustrated the behavior pattern of both unit variable costs as well as total variable costs. Now, one of the assumptions we make here is that there are no volume discounts granted for large volume purchases. So that's the assumption we make. So whether we buy a small amount of wood or whether we buy a large amount of wood, we are going to continue paying the same amount for each square foot of wood. So that's the assumption here, no discounts given for volume purchases. Okay, let's turn our attention now to fixed costs. So if we assume that the fixed cost we have is rent of $1,000 a month. So again, let's assume we will be paying rent of $1,000 a month. So if we have to pay rent at $1,000 a month, let's see what would be the behavior pattern of unit fixed costs and total fixed costs as we change the volume of tables manufactured. So when we manufacture one table, the total rent I pay my landlord is $1,000 because my landlord does not care whether I make one table or 10 tables. He still wants his $1,000. But if I were to take that total $1,000 and allocate it among the tables manufactured, which in this case is only one table, then that one single table gets allocated the entire $1,000 of rent. So my unit fixed cost also in this case is $1,000. But look what happens when we go to two tables. When I manufacture two tables, my landlord still wants his $1,000 of rent, doesn't he? So my total rent fixed cost still stays the same at $1,000. But when I go to allocate the $1,000 among the two tables that I have manufactured, then this time each table picks up only $500. That's 1,000 over 2, picks up only $500 of rent. So my unit fixed cost has dropped from $1,000 per table to $500 per table. But my total rent cost has stayed constant at $1,000 regardless of whether I manufactured one table, two tables, or three tables. So when I manufacture three tables, again, my landlord still wants the same $1,000 of rent. So my total fixed cost at three tables still remains constant at $1,000. But look what happens to my unit fixed cost. That is, when I take the $1,000 of rent and I allocate it over the three tables that I've manufactured, each table now picks up only $333 of rent, as opposed to the $500 earlier and the $1,000 before that. Okay. So what conclusions can we draw about the behavior patterns of fixed cost from this example? Your unit fixed cost changes inversely with changes in volume. It was $1,000 first, then $500, then $333. But look at your total fixed cost. As I said before, and I repeat, your total fixed cost does not change with changes in volume. Stays the same, as within a relevant range. Now, I introduce a new concept here, new term, relevant range. What do I mean by the term relevant range? In this case, let's assume, for instance, that if I were to operate my factory 24/7, 3 shifts a day, let's assume I could manufacture a maximum of 10,000 units. So in this case, we would say, in this example, the relevant range is between 1 unit and 10,000 units. What does that mean? That means what we are saying is that my total fixed cost of $1,000 will stay at $1,000 regardless of whether I manufacture one table or whether I manufacture 10,000 tables. So as long as I stay within the relevant range, my total fixed cost of $1,000 stays at $1,000. But if I wanted to manufacture more than 10,000 tables, I would have to probably rent another building and pay another $1,000. So in that case, if I went over 10,000 units of manufacture, then my fixed cost would increase, would go past the 1,000 because I'm going outside of my relevant range. So that's a little bit about the concept of relevant range. Now, let's take these two items that we've talked about and look at the effect on your total costs. So if you look up here on this part of the whiteboard, your total cost is equal to your total fixed cost plus your total variable cost. We can express the same equation on a unit cost basis. So my unit total cost will be equal to my unit fixed cost plus my unit variable cost. So let's look at this table to understand the effect of fixed cost and variable cost on my total unit cost. So if I were to manufacture one table, from our previous tables, my unit fixed cost is $1,000. My unit variable cost is $5. So my total unit cost is $1,005. That's combining the two. But look what happens to my total unit cost when I manufacture two tables. Now my unit fixed cost, again from the previous tables, is $500. My unit variable cost stays the same at $5. So this time my total unit cost has dropped from $1,005 to $505. A lot cheaper to make two tables than to make one table. And see how that unit cost drops when we make three tables. When we make three tables, what happens to my unit fixed cost, again from the previous tables, is down to $333. My unit variable cost does not change. It stays the same at $5. So now my total unit cost is only $338.